Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Your Ghost Stories podcast, which is about,
you guessed it,
your ghost stories.
So rather than this being your typical way too serious and over-the-top mundane podcast, we aim to make this show a little bit more lighthearted, but still giving you that thrill with the stories we're going to tell you. There'll be no over-the-top sound effects here.
On Your Ghost Stories, we invite you to be a part of the show. We listen to our fair share of podcasts and YouTube channels over the years, and one thing we think is missing is having a real conversation with the people who have actually had the experience. So you get it right from the horse's mouth and not from a script.
We're not here to pull apart people's stories or make assumptions. We just want to share people's true experiences and leave it up to you to decide your conclusions.
So, who are we?
We are Jamie and Nigel, two star-crossed lovers put together by the mystic powers of the universe. But yeah, in all seriousness, we met about 10 years ago. We're musicians. So Nigel and I played in a rock band. We're called Standing Like Statues. We played for many years. We had some cool successes on places like Kerrang and other stations around the world. We've travelled around the UK together. We've done so many different things like mountain climbing, holidays, touring with our band. We've done ghost tours and many other activities. Included one of them was a guided cave exploration where we unexpectedly had a high strangeness encounter, which we, to this day, cannot explain. We'll tell you a bit more about this later in the podcast.
We both share a fond interest in all things paranormal, from aliens to cryptoids to ghosts, and enjoy the odd conspiracy. While we might not agree on every subject, one thing we definitely agree on, and that is this world is not always as it seems.
The idea for this podcast only started a few weeks ago, so Nigel and his partner came over for dinner. We were sharing our own personal paranormal experiences throughout the evening, and we thought, these are worth sharing. So later that night, I was laying in bed, trying to sleep for about 4 hours, but all I could think of was setting up this very podcast and wondering if Nigel would be down to explore some ideas. And here we are.
This first episode is named Host Stories, no pun intended, as we dive in deeper on our own paranormal experiences throughout our lives. Then in the following episodes, we'll be sharing your ghost stories. If you're listening and keen to get involved and want to join in and tell your story on the show, drop us an email at yourghoststoriespodcast@gmail.com. That is yourghoststoriespodcast@gmail.com.
So we'd really love to get you on this show. You can join us via phone call or Zoom and share your experiences with our listeners, which right now is probably just your mum and dad, Nige, let's face it.
Hey, Mum.
Thank you so much for listening to our very first podcast. We've not done this before, so you got to excuse us, but we plan to make this a lot better. We hope you enjoy listening to this, and this is a new experience for both of us, but we have quite good plans for it, and want to really stick at this and see what could come of it. We're really, really excited to hear everyone's stories. We've already spoke to quite a few friends and families, and we've got some amazing stories on the way. So we plan to release about one episode per week to begin with. So stay tuned for and follow us on Spotify, Instagram, YouTube for lots more spooky stories. You can find us everywhere with the tag at Your Ghost Stories Podcast. We're going to dive straight in to our stories. So I think the way we're going to work this is, first of all, I'm going to go through my stories. I'll tell you kind of every experience that I've had in my life that pretty much all of them I can't explain, and it really gives me this sense that there's something else about this world. This first story is called I've Been Here Before. When I was about 4 years old, me, my mum and my sisters were driving through this little town that we never really went before. I had this sense of like deja vu. I said out loud to my mum, I've been here before. And my mum was a bit confused, and she said, what do you mean you've been here before? So, with my 4-year-old knowledge, I somehow went on to tell her an exact date from a past life in around the 1800s. I can't remember the exact date, but I told her I was a farmer. I told her my name, and I said I had lots of kids, but they kept dying. And I also said that, all this land that we're currently driving through used to be farmland. At the time, you've been there before.
Yeah.
It's a very kind of built up housing estate now. There's just hundreds and hundreds of houses everywhere and no farmland in sight. So, this is a really strange thing for a 4-year-old to come up with. So, we carried on with our journey, and, we didn't, my mum just thought, it's a kid just saying some random stuff. Me having a vivid imagination or something. But then it got a bit stranger because my oldest sister was going to college at the time, and she decided to look into it further. So she looked at an old census from the date I gave, and, for the records of the area, and she found out that the place I'd mentioned was indeed mostly farmland back in the 1800s. And, it's not the built-up residential area it is today. So she also looked at the surname which I gave, which, sadly I don't remember anymore. And she found out that the name was in that area at the time. So, maybe it was true. Maybe I was reincarnated. If you look into it, I'm sure you've heard so many stories, Nigel. Kids at that age being able to remember past lives. It's crazy. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of where my first kind of experience with the not known kind of happened. So then around the same age, I was growing up, in Cambridge. And one day I was laying in bed. I was woken up by this really strange feeling, that somebody was sitting on the end of my bed. And I looked up, and my grandmother was there, who had died from cancer a couple of years before I was born. So I never knew her, and I never even really knew what she looked like, to be honest. But I remember having a short conversation with her in which she mentioned, "I'm better now, Jamie," and everything was okay now. Which at the time, was completely normal. I just was just having a conversation with someone in my room.
I suppose your little mind can comprehend what was really going on.
Yeah, exactly. Like I didn't feel scared or anything. I just remember having a conversation with this, old lady sitting in my room. And she said, "I'm okay now, Jamie." It was really calming kind of experience. And the last thing she actually said to me, which still sticks to me to this day, and as I'm saying this, I've got kind of shivers, but the last thing she said to me was, "I'll come and see you again one day," which has never actually happened so far. So, no surprises, Nan, if you're listening, please. But the other weird thing is, in around that time, my mum, she never told me this until many years later, but my mum had the exact same experience, in the same house. She sat on my mum's bedside and said, "I'm okay now, I'm not in pain anymore." And so, how can you explain that? It happened to me, it happened to my mum. And, very, very strange. But many strange things actually happened in that house that I grew up in. Me and both my older sisters 100% claim that house was haunted. Or, like I say, so many strange things would happen. So, for instance, maybe I was about 5-6 years old at this time. So in our sitting room, we had a wall clock with a swinging pendulum. And, this pendulum hadn't worked for maybe a year or so due to it having no batteries. It just never got replaced. So it just kind of sat on the wall as a kind of, a small grandfather clock kind of thing with a swinging pendulum. And one day, me and my family were all sitting watching TV, and out of nowhere, the pendulum just started, swinging out of the blue. That one was really freaky. And, other things happened, like we'd go out for the day, come home, and the stereo would just be on full blast. And in that house, my older sisters claimed to see things as well. They both shared a room at the time, and they both saw hands coming through the door, which they both, even to this day, describe as witch hands. They look like really crooked
Witch
old lady hands. Yeah.
Oh man, that would have been like really creepy.
Yeah, I'm still getting shivers just, thinking about it. Like I say, we all conclusively agreed that house was haunted. And then, nothing really happened for a few more years. We moved to another house in Cambridge and lived there for a few more years, without any experiences whatsoever. So then I turned about 9 years old, and due to some change in family circumstances, me, my mum, and my middle sister, we moved to Southend. So here my mum met a new guy, and, this is where my little sister was born. And then one day we were asked to house sit for my mum's partner's sister while they were away on holiday. So over the years, we'd heard stories from them about how they believed their house was haunted. So I can't say I was really looking forward to staying there the night. So yeah, this story is one of the creepiest ones that ever happened to me. And I call this one The Rise of the Curtain. So I was probably about 9 or 11 years old. And yeah, stay at that house we did. As I say, I was totally freaked out by the prospect of staying at this house anyway. After watching some films downstairs with my mum, it was time for me and my middle sister to go up to bed. We were sharing a room which had a bunk bed, so, I was happy that I wasn't alone. And then she went to the toilet, getting ready for bed and stuff. And I remember sitting in this room, just being paralyzed with fear, thinking, oh God, please nothing happen. Like, I really don't want to be in this room alone with everything I've been told over the years about how haunted the house was and stuff. So my sister was taking a while, and I kept knocking on the door, asking her how long she was going to be and stuff. Just, in the hope that she'd just come out so I'm not alone in this room. And then while waiting, I was pacing up and down the room, just trying to distract myself, just really just wanting her to come back. I felt so scared. I genuinely felt really scared. Nothing had happened at this point, but I just had this horrible sensation. So to distract myself further, I went up to the window in the bedroom and just stared into the darkness of the garden. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I shit you not, right in front of my face, the net curtains. So, I'm sure most people listening will know what net curtains are, but they're just, flimsy white
Granny
curtains that, sit in front of the window. And out of nowhere, so I'm staring there, just looking through these net curtains into the dark garden. And right in front of my face, the net curtains lifted all the way to the top. It was like two hands had grabbed either side and just lifted them all the way. And they stayed up there for, a good few seconds. It's incredibly creepy. And then they just dropped back down. So I ran faster than I've ever ran before downstairs, crying my eyes out for my mummy. And I must say, there were no windows open at the time. There was absolutely no explanation of what I saw. And sadly, I still had to sleep in that room. But luckily, my sister eventually came back out of the bathroom. But yeah, I mean, man, that was...
Sounds intense.
Man.
Really intense.
Really intense. And, I just... why did that happen? It's like... It's hard to... Maybe I didn't explain it right, but it's hard to visualize, just... It's like two hands grabbed these curtains. I saw two dents where hands should be. And they just lifted all the way to the top and dropped back down. Right in front of my face.
Yeah, and if you think about it, like, for the power of like a breeze to do that, it has to be some sort of like proper breeze. And then if everyone's had curtains in their room, and they know when there's a breeze, they sort of blow out into the room, or they suck into the window. They don't lift up to the top and then just drop. Well, it's never happened to me anyway.
That's got to be one of the scariest things I think's happened to me. But yeah, and I'll tell you some more stories. So I call this one The Vanished Angel. So this is not actually my own ghost story. This is one my mum told me that really, really stuck with me. So also, we were based in Southend still at the time. I wasn't actually there, but my mum, her partner, and my little sister were there at the time. My sister was only a baby, and they went on a little trip to a nature reserve called Two Tree Island. So to set the scene a little, this place is a flat, marshy kind of reserve for bird watchers, walkers, and such.
Yeah.
And just as dusk was setting in, they walked back to my mum's car, strapped my little sister in her car seat, and went to leave. But as they started the ignition, the car didn't want to start. But sadly, they'd left quite late, and the car park was empty, and they were the last car there. There was nobody there to help them out or give them a jump start or anything. So not knowing really what to do, my mum lifted up the bonnet, looked inside, but couldn't see much of a problem because obviously she's not a mechanic. And then not long after, after opening the bonnet, a car just appeared out of nowhere. there was no sound. It's all on gravel and everything. There's no sound of this car coming. You could probably see for a good, half a mile all around you. And yeah, this car just appeared out of nowhere. And this guy jumped out of his car and, he asked, do you need some help? And luckily, he had some jump leads in his boot and began to jumpstart the car battery for my mum. Got it all working again, success, great. They can go on their way home. My mum didn't really think much of it at the time. She was like, oh, that's weird. Where did this guy come from? But, thank God he's here. And then just as they started the car, my mum, within seconds, got out the car, went to go and thank this hero for, rescuing them in the dark in this car park all alone. And he's just completely gone without a trace, like, how he arrived. They didn't see him come in. They didn't see any headlights come in. They didn't hear a sound. No sound of his car leaving. No sign of him, Like I said, this location, if you've ever been, it's super flat and, you can see for miles around. You can see all around you. He was absolutely nowhere to be seen. So maybe he was a guardian angel. Who knows?
And that's pretty cool. Again, not everyone's experience of like the paranormal has always got to be negative. I mean, it's quite common for everyone to for a lot of people to have negative experience, especially where they're scared. I mean, in that instance, that sounds like it was, really, really strange, but you knew there was no malice there. So I mean, that was really cool. If not, again, it's still scary. Like, imagine someone appears and then the next moment they disappeared again. It's gonna sort of like freak you out, but in a good way, I suppose.
But yeah, like you say, man, it was a really nice kind of story, and they're just very lucky that whoever or whatever this guy was there at the time. And I mean, I'm sure they wouldn't have been stranded forever. Then if he didn't turn up, they'd still be on this island waiting for rescue or turned into bones by now. But yeah, so yeah, carrying on with some more stories. Then due to another change in circumstance, a few years later, me, my mum and my little sister moved back to Cambridge. We lived in a couple of houses over a few years and then finally settled down into a place called Hardwick, a few miles outside of Cambridge, where my mum met another guy, got remarried and settled down. One thing I will say, it's a little bit personal, but there was a lot of arguing and negative energy over the course of the next few years. And I'm sure, as you know, Nige, from the things I've heard, listening to countless documentaries, podcasts, books, on the paranormal and stuff, this kind of negative energy has the potential to, maybe attract spirits. And I personally believe, that it really did. So I lived in this house from the age of maybe 15 to 22, and I had some really totally unexplainable experiences here. So when I was about 19, sadly my granddad passed away. He spent his last Christmas with us and died a few months later. At the time, I was in a bit of a bad place mentally. I started smoking cigarettes and abusing, marijuana, things like that. Some things my granddad, definitely would not have been proud of. And then one day, I had one of my best mates over. We were sitting in my room, sitting there rolling a joint. We were sober at this point. But I started talking about my granddad and said, how I think he'd be disappointed in me from, what I was doing. And out of nowhere, I had a shelf above my head, and every last item on the shelf was just like swept across the room. So, I mean,
That's
I can't
weird.
explain that. It never happened in the 10 years I was in that room, other than in that moment when I was, talking about how I think he wouldn't approve of what I'm doing. So yeah, I think he was maybe just agreeing with what I just said. And then, after brushing it off, me and my friend went outside for a smoke, continued to do so, until it was bedtime. And then the next morning, I woke up, opened my bedroom door to just go downstairs, and laying right in front of me was half a joint, which left me a little bit confused. Me and my friend had finished smoking the weed, the night before, and my friend was sharing the room with me all night, so, he didn't get up and go and have one. We didn't have any left, and we'd finished everything. So I was just really confused. You know, no one else in my house smoked weed, so couldn't have been them. And then my friend woke up, and I said to him, like, really confused, I was like, did you drop this or leave it here? Which also left him, you know, quite confused. No explanation. Maybe, you know, another sign from my granddad to say he knows what I'm up to. But yeah, thankfully, after many years, managed to kick the smoking habits. So hopefully he's happy with me now.
And as I'm sure people know, drugs aren't cheap. So it's not it's like you got to leave it lying around. So
yeah, and but yeah, that was a nice little present from the spirit world, maybe.
Did you smoke it?
We did smoke it. Cheers, Grandad. I mean, yeah, I don't know, you know. That's just something that happened. I just can't explain it. And it was just weird that happened the night after. I mean, most people listening to this are probably just thinking, you know.
Dropped it. But
yeah. But, you know, if you were there, we knew we'd finished it. We knew it'd all go on. But it was just perfectly right in front of my bedroom door, half a spliff. Like,
yeah, it's weird, man.
Yeah,
it's
very
weird.
strange. A few more things happened in that house over the years, which my mum actually still lives in. I went there today, in fact. And the next one really, really creeped me out. This is another one. This is probably I've said this a few times now, but this really was a weird one.
This one shake you up?
Yeah, and like to this day, I'm like, what the hell happened there? With this one's, you know, a bit more unexplainable than the previous one, where we were probably just stoned. Let's face it. I'm joking. But yeah, so this story is probably happened about 6 years ago now. So I used to spend a lot of time alone in my bedroom, you know, playing Xbox, working on my laptop, you know, whatever a young teen does or, you know, adolescent guy does. And I was sitting at my desk, and all of a sudden there was a loud knock at my door, followed by my mum's ex-partner saying, "Jamie, come downstairs now," in like a really kind of stern voice.
Yeah.
You know, I instantly thought was out of place. You know, he never kind of did that. Plus, you know, it was quite a small house. You've been to my mum's house.
Yeah.
There's just 3 bedrooms up the stairs, you know, compact.
Very not a very small landing.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you couldn't even swing a cat, right?
No.
Not that we condone swinging cats. But yeah. So, you know, in a house like that, you just know if someone's, you know, in the next room, or if they're upstairs, or you'd hear them coming up the stairs. And I had no music on, nothing. So yeah, this knock on the door. "Jamie, come downstairs now." And I went, "Why?" No answer. So I listened closely, you know, for the sound of him going down the stairs. I was just met with total silence. You know, it was like he was still outside my door, but not replying to me. And then after a few seconds, I opened my door, you know, expecting him just to be there, but nobody was upstairs, you know, just like I thought. So confused, I was confused, you know, I heard no footsteps going down the stairs. I went downstairs, went into the sitting room where my mum and my little sister were sat. I said to them, you know, "Do you know what he wants? He's just told me to come downstairs." And they were like, "No, he's outside in the shed." So I said, "So he didn't just come up the stairs and, you know, knock on my door?" And they said, "No, we didn't hear anyone. You know, just go and ask him." So I was like, "What?" Like, you know, they'd have heard him. The stairs is right next to, and they'd have heard him up the stairs. So yeah, so confused. I went down to the, you know, long garden path. You know, the back garden's very long, and there's a shed at the end. So, and he's in the shed. So I went all the way down there. I said to him, "Yeah, you know, you called me. What is it you want?" And he said, "No, I never called you." He was like, "I've been here the whole time." I said, "You know, you literally just came, knocked on my door, and said, 'Come downstairs.'" And he was like, "Nope, I've been here the whole time." So, you know, I can say with 100% certainty it was his voice I heard, and clear as day, you know, there was a big loud knock on my door. To this day, absolutely no explanation to this. I'm still left very confused about the situation. You know, I've heard a few stories of, you know, ghosts throwing their voice to sound like family members.
Yeah, I've heard it. Well, I've heard similar. Very.
And guess it seems like it happened to me. Really weird, that one. And just another one in this house, another time. So I was just with my old stepbrother at the time. We were just in the kitchen talking. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go upstairs now. As I walked out of the kitchen to go up the stairs, I was just met with this like evil sounding growl right in my ear. Absolutely no idea where it came from. Yeah, that was weird. Do you want me to do an impression of the growl?
Go on.
Yeah.
So, what's the name of your band?
Justin Bieber.
Yeah, man. I mean, again, that would freak me out.
Yeah, it's just so weird, man. Like, just another thing to add to the long list of strange things that have happened to me. And then I got a few more, and then we'll move on to Nigel's stories. So another time, a few years later, I actually have video evidence of this one. So the naysayers can have a go on this and let me know what you think. So I was alone in the house with my younger sister at the time. I was just being a really annoying big brother, teasing her. I took her phone out of her hand as she was texting or something.
Oh, how nice of you.
I was just, you know, annoying her. And I was just being stupid. And I started recording myself of her trying to get her phone back, you know, just trying to be funny. And after about 30 seconds or so, I gave her the phone back and said, let's watch it, thinking it would be hilarious. And then halfway through the video, there's just this clear voice, which sounds like an old lady going, "What are you doing?" So me and my sister watched that, and we both looked at each other. I was like, "Was that you?" But no, you know, it wasn't her. You can see her in the video, and it's clearly not my voice either. And, you know, I knew what I was doing. I was being an idiot. And, you know, yeah, so we had no TVs on, no radios, nothing. And, you know, as you'll hear it on the video, anyone can hear this voice. It's clear as day. So if you go follow us on Instagram at yourghoststoriespodcast, I'll put the video up there for you all to see, and then comment on the video. Let us know what you think. So not long after this, I moved out with some friends, not because I was scared of all the ghost experiences. It was just, you know, I was at an age where I was ready to fly the nest and become a real boy. So this story is actually from my younger sister. And again, we've got, you know, a picture of this. This one is creepy. I'll throw the picture up on Instagram again. The tag is Your Ghost Stories Podcast. That's where you can come find us. So yeah, this one was probably only around a year ago. My mum was out for the night, so I, you know, like I said, I'd moved out at the time. I was living, you know, where we are now. My sister was alone in the house, just with the dog. You know, she weren't too pleased about that. You know, she's had quite a few uneasy experiences in this house too. You know, living there, personally, I'd always just felt like I was kind of being watched. And then she went downstairs, like, you know, again, she's alone in the house, all the doors are locked. She went down the stairs and she came back upstairs, I think, to go to bed or something. No, I'm not actually sure. I think it was daytime. But anyway, she went down the stairs, and as she come back upstairs, there was just this drawing on her window, like someone had finger painted in the dust. So yeah, it was just like a perfect image of a girl wearing a crown. Yeah, I'm like, no explanation whatsoever. She texted me right away, and she sent me the picture, and she was like, "Help!" She was like, "I've just gone downstairs, come upstairs, and this is on the window."
Was this your old room? The one you moved out of?
No, so she's got my mum's old room.
Oh, okay.
But this is the same room where I filmed me being an idiot, and we heard that voice. But yeah, I mean, yeah, go and have a look at this picture on Instagram. It's so creepy. You know, I trust my little sister. She ain't just going to make this up. You know, if she did that, and she ain't going to freak herself out by doing something, like, I don't know, like, I know
risk
her.
You teasing her for the rest of her
Yeah,
life.
I know her, and I know she didn't do this, you know, for attention or whatever. It was so creepy, man. Yeah, like I say, I'm going to put this picture on our Instagram, and again, let us know what you think about this picture. So yeah, like she texted me and she said, you know, it wasn't there, you know, earlier in the day. She was completely alone. And then I came over about 2 days later as, you know, I wanted to see it. I wanted to go and have a look at this little weird picture. And it just completely gone. You know, she didn't rub it off, nothing. So that was really creepy. I got a couple more stories which happened with friends. So, you know, I definitely wasn't imagining these. And one of them is right here with my buddy Nigel.
What?
So I'm sure you can help me tell this story, Nigel. So
Yeah. This one is about the time where we're in a coal mine, actually.
so we're doing one of our many adventures.
Yeah.
This one wasn't a ghosty one or anything. We're just doing a deep cave exploration.
Yeah. So it was a guided tour. So we couldn't just sort of go off and do it on our own. We had a professional with us, and
Yeah, so we were in we went to a little forest holiday, didn't we? And you know, with a nice hot tub and all that.
yeah,
It was in Gloucestershire,
yeah,
and yeah, like I say, we went on done this cave diving thing. It was at a place called Clearwell Caves, and yeah, as we walked into the cave, wearing our overalls and head torch, we had about 6 other people with us and the guide.
It's fair amount for people.
And as we walked in, the guide padlocked this metal gate to the cave entrance. I think his explanation at the time was something like, it stops people coming in from behind us, just so we're totally alone during the excursion. You know, no little local youths coming in and messing with us or, you know, whatever. You know, it's just like, I'll just say, it's just a simple excursion. We're just climbing through some narrow holes, Nigel getting his arse stuck. Yeah, you just, you know, going deeper into these caves and, you know, learning about its history and having a look around. Yeah.
So, yeah, in this cave, it took quite a long time to go around it because there's so many sort of like different sort of areas that they can take you. And one of them was, so you followed this route, and it took you through this. So it took you through to this place called the Rabbit Run, and basically what it is, so the cave was open, it had a big drop off the side, but there was like a path, and I think there was like sort of a barrier or something to stop you falling off the side. But you basically went round this sort of like corner, and then you had a tunnel in front of you. And he warned us, he called this one the Rabbit Run, because as you're going through it, it starts getting narrower and narrower, and you end up having to go on your hands and knees, and then you pop through a hole at the other end, and that takes you out into a big open cavern. So this time, we were going through this cave, because we were all in a long line, and we were towards sort of like the back, and we didn't notice anything out of the ordinary. You know, it's just like this cave, walls and rocks and everything. So then we start going through this tunnel, go through, we all go through the Rabbit Run, and then we carry on with the tour. You know, and he's talking to us all about the cave, and he gets us to all sit down at one point and turn our head torches off, so it's completely black, and you're like immersed in the darkness. And
It's like you'd never felt darkness like it, right?
Exactly, yeah. You just, you know, you put your hand in front of your face. You just cannot see, your eyes don't work basically. And then we turned the torches back on, and then he was just asking like questions, people asking about the caves and all that. And then me, just being curious, I started asking about, we'll get onto this a little bit later, but I did ask him, I was like...
This was on the walk back, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I said, you know, about, you know...
Bearing in mind, we walked back the exact same route we came.
Yeah.
And there was no one else in this caves with us at the time. You know, the door was locked behind us, the metal gate. So yeah, like you're saying, we walked back. It was the Rabbit Run bit, right?
Yeah. So as we was the ones towards the end of the line going through it. So on the way back, we were one of the first lot to come out.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, as we were the last ones entering into this like section of like the tunnel. Didn't see anything weird, but on the way back we were the first ones out, and as we popped out of the tunnel, a little distance away from the entrance of this tunnel, there was all these rocks piled up on top of each other, and they were done by size. So you had large.
There's a name for it, isn't there? Like rock balancing. That's it. Rock
Yes,
balancing.
yeah. So this is rock balancing formation, and it just
And it came up to what, our waists.
it was weird. Like it was something that you couldn't have missed going on the way in.
It was right in the middle of the path, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was like you wouldn't have, whoever was behind it, like obviously we were the last ones, and there was no one in front of us because it would have took quite some time to build this formation and balance everything perfectly, and you just wouldn't have that amount of time of doing that while you're all going through this tunnel.
I think the weird thing is just before this happened, like you're saying, the guide asked for some questions, and we were interested about, has this place got any ghost stories or anything?
Is the cave haunted? Is the first thing I said to him.
He's probably like, oh bloody hell, here we go. But no, he's actually he gave us a really cool story.
Yeah.
And what was the story? It's about an old man or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, there's quite a few, but just briefly touching. So all these stones were balanced, and there's no way that we would have had the time to have built it,
or anyone in front of us. Yeah.
So it was just there, and I think even the guide, because we pointed it out.
The guy looked a bit white, didn't he?
He was like, "What?
We were like,
really strange.
How did this get there? Like, it wasn't there 10, 20 minutes ago when we walked past here." And he was like, "I have no idea." He was, just as confused as us. So yeah, we didn't see any kind of apparitions or anything in this cave. But like we asked him about ghost stories and stuff, and he said there's actually a famous story of an old man and a TV film crew. So they had quite a few, because it's such a cool location, they had quite a few TV crews down in the caves, probably since, I don't know, the 70s or something. And they film, episodes or films and so on. And I think the story goes, you can actually look this up online. So if you type in Clearwell Caves Ghosts, it's quite well documented. And I think, quite a few people have seen this guy, this apparition. I think the story goes that, this TV crew were down there in these caves filming. And on their way out, I think one of the film, I think he said the sound guy or something, had, got a little bit lost. But he saw an old man in the cave who, kindly gave him directions and said, take this way out, and you can leave the cave. And, once he found his way out, he said, to the other crew, we've got to wait for the old man. He's still down there. To which, the whole crew replied, you're the last one. There's no one else in the cave. Like I say, you can find, probably the whole story and much better information online. So yeah, like I say, just type in Clearwell Caves, and so that we had a little Google, and it pops up, which is really cool.
And another one he told us about this old man was as well. Initially, when the crew was going down there, so they had to route all their power cables for all their cameras, because back in the day, not everything was sort of like battery powered. So they were struggling to where they wanted to go. The cables weren't long enough, and they said again, this old man appeared and showed them a shortcut that they could route their cables. So they did. They followed this guy's shortcut and set all the cameras up. When they turned around to thank him, it was nowhere to be found. And then they believe it's the same guy. So it's creepy.
Yeah. I'd love to lolook into this a little bit more and see.
Yeah, I think the caves are closed now, aren't they?
I'm not sure. Reason. That'd be a shame.
Yeah, because I did look it up, and because I would recommend going there because it was an absolutely amazing tour. Apart from getting my arse stuck,
that was the highlight for me.
Yeah, this section of the cave called I kind of call it like the mouse hole or something.
Yeah, something like that.
And you basically have to lay on your belly, turn your head to the side, and you've got a hat on, so that takes up a bit of room. So you've got to lay on your side, on your front, look to the side, and just belly crawl. And it's only a few meters. And so as I start doing it, I got halfway through, and then all of a sudden because it's very claustrophobic, I start to panic. And I'm like, my arse is stuck. I said, Jovi, take my hand.
I had to pull you out. Luckily you survived.
Yeah.
And I got, one last story which happened to me and a good friend a few years ago. So we used to work on the third floor of an office building in the centre of Cambridge. Like all good employees, we like to have a little break every hour or so and go downstairs for a chat and a coffee and stuff. and just hang out in the car park and just not do any work.
Very productive.
Very, very productive. And then one day, it was actually, we used to go like on the hour, every hour, grab a coffee, go downstairs, just chill out. And one day I remember it was exactly 2 p.m. So yeah, as usual for the past 4 or 5 years, went downstairs, had a good old chat, and walked out to the back door. And when we finished, we walked back in, usual routine, go call for the lift, go back up to the office. And as we walked through the door into the lobby of the office building, the lift started to close, and we both saw a man's leg go into the lift. Nothing out of the ordinary. There's hundreds of people that worked in this office building, so we didn't think anything of it. We just like, gotta wait for the next lift. So what we both saw is I saw someone wearing black trousers and the black boots, and they went into the lift. Like I said, just all I saw was one leg, as a motion of walking into the lift, and thinking nothing of it. We hit the button, waited for the next lift, and as we hit the button, the door that we both saw this man go into opened. And
straight away, as soon as you push the button?
Yeah. So, we were expecting either the door or, the lift not to open because this guy's gone upstairs, or the door to open and this guy just hadn't pressed the button. But as the door opened, nobody was in that lift. We just both looked at each other and we were like, did you just see that? So which we both freaked out.
Did you get in the lift?
Oh, yeah, we still got in the lift, but we both freaked out. Before we got in the lift, actually, we went to the reception, which is, just through one of the doors, and we said, we've just seen someone go into that lift, and now they're not there. They're looking at us like, you crackheads. Like, they're like, what are you on about? Like, we were like, honestly, they had CCTV monitor sitting on the office desk, and we were like, can you rewind that CCTV? And they were like, oh, we can't access it, and unless like a crime or something's been committed. So yeah, sadly, we just wanted to see this happen on CCTV. We were both like, we both just saw this. Like, we're not crazy. We both just saw this happen right in front of our eyes. And they unfortunately couldn't rewind it and thought we were nuts. And yeah, but the weird thing is, the very, very next day, exactly the same time, 2 p.m., my friend Steve went downstairs. I was busy actually working for once, or probably watching something on Netflix. So I told him I'd come down next time, and, he goes instead. He saw the exact same thing, exactly 24 hours later. A man walks into the lift, the door closes. As he presses the button, the door opens, and no one is in the lift. Just completely vanished. So yeah, he then ran up the stairs to tell me what happened again. I fully trust this guy. Like, he wouldn't just make this up. I saw it happen the day before, and I have absolutely no reason to disbelieve him. It's safe to say that the night shifts in that place were never the same. But yeah, I mean, that concludes pretty much all my personal experiences in my life. I think they're weird. I think a lot of strange stuff has happened that I can't explain.
Yeah, totally, man. They sound absolutely some of them sound absolutely horrifying.
So yeah, we're done with my stories now. Now we're going to pass over to Nigel.
I suppose it's onto my stories then. I'm not sure they're as... I haven't physically seen any apparitions or anything, but so my experiences are more of I suppose, a sense and a feeling. So I've never seen any sort of like solid figure or apparition. So mine are all, as I say, from another sense. But so yeah, my first brush with unexplained paranormal dates back to when I was a kid in the early 90s. I'm an 80s baby, but a 90s kid.
Getting on, mate.
Yeah, I know. I must have been about 4 or 5. And at the time, we lived in a little, they call it like a retirement town, but it's not anymore, but a place called St. Neots. Lived in a council house well rough. Represent. No, I had a good upbringing, but yeah. So I lived in this 3-bed council house. So I used to share a bedroom with my older brother. So there's about nearly 2 years between me and my brother. So the bedroom we had was quite a large bedroom. We had bunk beds, but I had to sleep at the bottom through fear of. My mum said she was afraid I'd roll out the bed from the top, whereas my brother used to say he was afraid that if I slept on the top, I'd wet the bed and it'll rain on him. Very nice. So yeah, so that was our bedroom. Just a typical kid's bedroom. But the way the bed was situated in this room was, so we had the doorway was in one far corner of the room, and our bed was in the opposite corner of the room. So from where I was laying in the bed, you had a direct view of the doorway and the landing. Now my mum at the time thought it was a great idea, you know, so we weren't scared of the dark. Should get a night light. So there's a little plug socket in the hall.
You still got that, in you? You still use that nightlight?
I still got it, but yeah. So there's this lovely night light that my mum would plug into the wall and turn on the night, and it would give off a hellish, eerie red glow, a bit like what we use here, but a bit more sinister. It was like I don't think it was an LED. I think it was like a filament, because it used to.
Your mum was like, "Oh, this will be a laugh."
It used to flicker, and it it didn't bring me any comfort whatsoever. You know, if anything,
did the opposite.
yeah. I get it, but yeah. So anyway, my first memory of an encounter I had that frightened me was, it sort of paralyzed in fear. But anyway, so I was in bed. It was late, and I know it was late because when I'd woken up suddenly, I could tell everyone was in bed, because when I was little, my mum and dad used to send us off to bed, and you'd be able to hear the TV downstairs. You could hear it just.
Got another council house, haven't you?
Yeah. And when I woke up, it was completely silent. You know, I knew my brother was in bed above me, but as I was laying there, I could feel the bottom of my bed.
You could feel rain above you.
No, so as I was laying in the bed, and I woke up suddenly. I didn't move. It was just literally one of those things where you've woken up and you open your eyes, and I was facing the wall, and I just felt this weight on the bottom of my bed, like pushed down, and I felt the covers go tight around my legs. And my first thought was, it's the dog. It's the dog's jumped on the bed. But in my little mind, when I thought about it, no, when the dog jumps on the bed, it used to jump on the bed and come up to my up to my head. And not with dogs, they usually circle. They don't just plonk down. So yeah, I felt these covers go really tight. And I remember turning my head slightly and looking in that direction, and what I saw was absolutely nothing. All I could see was the indent of the covers still pushed down, an imprint, and it just freaked me out. I sort of like froze, looked back at the wall, and I was just laying there, and I'm like, pretend to be asleep, pretend to be asleep, pretend to be asleep, pretend to be asleep. Don't move, don't move, don't move. Because in my head, if I moved, it would know I was awake, and it would get me. So that was like, and then I think I just kept saying it over and over in my head until I just fell asleep.
That's a creepy thing to happen, man. I mean, the weird thing is the exact same thing happened to Sammy, my partner.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure she told you this when we were talking about them originally. But yeah, she had a very, very similar encounter where she was laying in bed, and she actually thought it was her dad sleepwalking.
Yeah.
And yeah, she laid there just so scared, like wanting to turn around and be like, you know, just, oh no, like it's gonna freak her out just because her dad's sleepwalking.
Yeah.
And she turned around, and she kicked out to feel anyone there, and there was no one there. But yeah, she felt that indentation in her bed. So weird, isn't it?
Yeah, it was, as I say, like, So this happened quite a few times when I was little, and it was like there was something physically there because I would push my leg against it and I'd feel the resistance, but yet there was no one there. And so this actually really scared me. It scared me to the point that when I used to go I was a little kid and I didn't understand what's going on, so I didn't tell my mum or anything like that. So, but when I used to go to bed, I used to get into bed and I used to have two pillows. I would pull the covers all the way up to the bottom of my lip, and I'd put the other pillow over my head, so I had this little gap where my mouth was. There's a little peephole in my mouth, just so I could breathe, because I was so scared of looking out into the bedroom at night because of this red light.
Cheers, mum.
Yeah. And then
your mum bought the demons.
Yeah. And this one, it escalated a little bit more. So, again, laying in bed, it's quite consistent with me sleeping this way. I don't know how I didn't suffocate, but so one night, again, I woke up suddenly. I still had a pillow over my head. Covers were still on me. But this time, I felt, it's weird, I say cold, but at the same time, it's like the hairs on the back of my neck were standing up and my whole body just felt electrified. Like all the hair everywhere was just like ping on standing on end. And then all of a sudden, I felt the covers. From the bottom of the bed, the covers started to get pulled. And it was very slowly at first. And they started to come down past my face, past my chin. And then I quickly grabbed the covers and I was pulling them. And there was a resistance pulling my covers. And I was like having this like sort of battle. And I just freaked out and I yelled, "Mom!" And it just like that, it stopped. My mum bolted into the room.
Didn't want to deal with your mum.
You turned the light on. What's going on? What's going on? And also, she just thought I had a nightmare. But yeah, hands down, it was so quick. It wasn't my brother messing around because he was obviously in bed. And when my mum came running into the room, turned the light on, it's woke him up like, what's going on? And then there's me, and there was no time for anything to leave the room because he would have bumped straight into my mum. It was really, I'll say it was traumatic because I developed a fear of the dark. And I hated, so at night, obviously wake up in the middle of the night and I'd need a wee. I'd absolutely hate getting out of bed to go to the bathroom because I'd have to leave my bedroom, go past the stairs, and then get into the bathroom. And again, I hate going past the stairs because it's completely pitch black. And I think it's quite common for people to say this, that stairs are a big thing where either you're at the top and you feel like something's down at the bottom watching you, or vice versa. So when I was little, I used to try and hold it for hours and hours and hours till I heard my parents get up, go to the toilet with a light, and I'd be like, I'm running out to the toilet.
No wonder your brother didn't want to sleep under you.
But so I started to get a bit braver, and as the years went on, again, still petrified of the dark. I wake up needing a pee. And so what I used to do was I used to walk to the doorway, and I'd run from my bedroom, and in the gap between the stairs, I would jump because I was scared that someone's going to grab me. So I'd run, jump this gap, and go bang and crash into the bathroom, waking my parents up every time, getting like freaked out. But yeah, it's safe to say I wasn't popular with my parents doing that. Other than that, growing up in that house from a young age, again, I just remember hearing footsteps. Again, I used to think it was if my parents come upstairs, because they would come up, you hear the footsteps go upstairs, quite like not fast, just gradual, dunk, 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 and then you'd hear them on the landing because the floorboards would squeak. And it would stop outside the bedroom door. And our bedroom door, at some point, we used to close the bedroom door as we got older. And it would just like stay there. And you'd sit there for like minutes, what felt like hours, just listening. Like, why are they just standing outside my door? Why aren't they moving? They're just standing there. And you'd be laying there for like 10, 15 minutes. It's like too scared to get out of bed and go and look. It's like there's no way my parents are going to be standing there outside the door for unknown reason, just waiting. Creepy.
Something about these council house ghosts and
Yeah. The council hire them because they want to evict us.
yeah.
I have no problem with the council. So yeah, that was my story from what I can remember from a very, very young age. There are some other stories that my parents and my brother's wife used to tell us what they'd seen in the house, where they'd, for instance, I never knew my grandparents. They'd long passed since I was born. But quite a few times, people would be sitting in our kitchen, and obviously that's where our back garden was, with the garden wall and everything. And people would be like, family be there having a cup of tea or something, and then they would stop because they just said, someone's come to the door. And so they'd stop, wait for someone to knock, and they go to the door and there's no one there. And this is like sometimes during the daytime. And the people would describe this older man wearing like just it's a bit like 50s style clothes, just walk past the window. It's just one of those really weird experiences.
I really like the it's not a ghost story, but I really like the story you told me about your dad sleepwalking.
Okay, so yeah, hey Dad, I'm going to tell the world about your sleepwalking experiences. So yeah, I suppose as a teenager, I remember this one time being in bed, I was asleep. Next thing I know, my bedroom door is flung open, the lights flicked on, my dad's standing there stark bollock naked, looking into the room, going, ooh, turns around, walks out into my brother's room, opens the door, turns the light on, it's gone. He's gone downstairs, turning the lights on, and at this point, I'm up out of bed. I'm like, what the hell's going on? What's going on? So I go out to the landing, and there's my mum walking out into the landing, going, oh, he's on one again. It's like, what? She's like, oh, he's on one. He's sleepwalking. He's walking around the whole house, turning all the lights on, thinking he's fighting, chasing demons. I'm like, what's going on?
Ray the Demon Slayer.
Yeah, I hope they had the curtains closed.
What an image I have in my head there of you just laying in bed and your dad just coming in naked.
I'm mentally scarred.
I bet you are. That's worse than any paranormal experience.
So again, so after my early teens, they were pretty, I suppose, uneventful. I didn't really experience anything paranormal or sort of like high strangeness for quite some time. This I still had a fear of the dark, and I always felt like if I was going into another room on my own, I always felt like something was watching me. But as I grew older, I sort of like grew out of it, and just nothing ever happened. So I kind of like I lost the fear of it. But anyway, going back to my hometown of St. Neots, there's this really old brick cage / lockup. It's right by the church near where I live, where I used to work. And there's this opposite the road from it. There's this, as I say, this lockup which was built in about 1825, opposite the church. And what it was used for was to lock up local drunks or those people who committed petty crimes, just to lock them up over the night while they awaited their trial or was sobered up and they released them in the morning. But everyone who lives there knows of the old small building. It's often just forgotten about. No one really pays any attention to it other than sort of like bank holidays. They might open it up to visitors and some people might be interested. But yeah, it's just a really old building that's been preserved for many years. But anyway, one evening, I must have been about 21. I met up with one of my mates and we went to the local pub, had a few drinks and a catch up. And after a few pints, we was just, for whatever reason, we got onto the topic of those ghost shows. The one on the TV where they were actively trying to capture evidence. but screaming, "What was that?" every time some little noise in the dark or when a piece of evidence actually showed up, they all fell apart. But so after we finished our drink, we thought it'd be fun to walk around the church cemetery. Bearing in mind, this must have been about 9 o'clock in winter, so it's quite dark. So we're walking around this church cemetery, looking for a cheap thrill. We walk through the graveyard, laughing and quoting these TV shows. And that's when we decided to make our way to the cage, which was literally just across the road from the church. So we waddled over to this cage, laughing our heads off, and we stood there at the door, which was it was a wooden door.
Doing an impression of Derek Acora.
Yeah. And so we got to this wooden door, but it had like iron bars at the top, so you could see partway into the lockup. And that's when my mate Jack, he suggested, he used a voice recorder on his phone. Bearing in mind, when we're like, these were the early phones, so I think it's like you might have had a camera, but yeah, had a voice recorder on it. So we stood at the wooden door. Jack poked his phone through, and he nodded at me and was like, "Go on, try and talk to the spirits." So after a few moments of laughing at the idea, I mockingly said, "If there's anyone there, knock twice for yes and once for no." And we waited about 10 seconds or so, and then Jack stopped the recording and we burst out laughing at our stupidity. And then while we're still standing on the spot by the door, we fell silent and Jack played it back on his phone. I've got this clip actually, so I've got this recording still, so I can you can find it on the Instagram page, which will be your
Ghost Stories podcast.
Yeah.
It's getting late. Nigel's getting tired.
It's a school night. So anyway, so we played it back, and our faces dropped. For the audio, did play something back. Throughout the clip, you can hear a constant banging with a faint voice that says, "Go away," followed by what sounds like a raspy breath right up against the phone. At this point, Jack screamed and took off running, and he took off running to the nearest lamppost because it was like a bit of light, and only me standing there freaking out, go, "What?" And so I started bolting too.
So this sound you didn't hear at all, like with not on the recording.
No, like so when we was actually standing there, it was completely silent. That's why we laughed, because it was like, this ghost is going to say like he's going to knock once for no, he's not there. So it was just like having an absolute laugh. But yeah, when we played it back, absolutely horrified. It was weird. Like you could clearly hear the banging, and you can hear that voice, and it's just the raspy sort of like breath, like sort of going. It was just, yeah, it completely freaked us out. But as I say, I've got the clip, and it's old, but.
So yeah, we got a few. We got 3 clips to post on our Instagram. So yeah,
definitely
check it out at Your Ghost Stories Podcast. So it seems you got one more story to tell us, Nige.
Yeah. So after that, I haven't experienced anything I really took notice to for quite a long time. And in my most recent encounter happened in 2020. So in January, we just bought a house and moved in. So this house was completely sort of gutted and needed a lot of just sort of like cosmetic tidying up and just redecorating and stuff. It was a good house, and we got it at a cheap price. And I didn't know this until after I had my experiences. But so anyway, in the house, we'd moved in and basically set most of our things up. We'd moved into one of the bedrooms, and it was just living in the house on the weekends, and when we could, we'd just decorate them. And I started to experience some really, really weird things. So
your dad just burst into the door naked in the middle of the night. "I'm back, son."
I'm still haunted by that. But yeah, so what was happening to me was, I'd be asleep, and in the middle of the night, I'd wake up to a door slamming. I would hear a door slam, and I'd be like, I'm straight away wide awake, and I'm like, Sam. I was like, Did you hear that? And she's like, what are you on about? I'm like, someone's just slammed the door. So there's me like grabbing her baseball bat, which is a limited edition Harley Quinn baseball bat. She's like looking at me. She's like, how much that costs? So I picked up this baseball bat. I'm flicking on the lights, and I'm like going around the house. I'm like, it was only a small house anyway, but I'm like, there's no one here. I was like, I heard the door slam. And she's like, you're imagining things. So obviously, I go back to bed. But I hear it every now and again. I'd hear a door slam, and it'll wake me up. And what one of these things that I did hear was so a bedside cabinet right next to my bed. Again, fast asleep, and all of a sudden I hear 3 knocks on my bedside cabinet, like 1, 2, 3, and straight away I was awake, and I'm like staring. I'm like, what the hell's going on? Something is knocking on my bedside cabinet. It freaked me out, and then I started like looking online at a few things, like what's going on, and there's this thing called exploding head syndrome, where apparently you're in a dream state and you start hearing your dreams. Bearing in mind, like, I'm over 30 and I've never experienced that until that time.
Living at this house.
Yeah, I've never experienced like audible hallucinations. I don't even know what you would call those, but I've never heard things like in dreams or anything like that. But one physical thing that I found that I actually saw in front of, I heard it and I saw it. So after about 8 months, after about 2 months, we got some puppies. So and they used to sleep in the front room at night. So but what we used to do was we used to put the radio on for them really quietly, a little bit classical or something, just to put them at ease. I don't know if it does, but it seems to. So anyway, I set this radio up. It works off the mains. So I've got the station, got it all dialed in, set the volume, the lights off, but the lights on in the on the landing. So there's still some light I can see. So I turn around, I'm walking out the room, a few paces, and all of a sudden I hear a click, and the radio goes off. And I turn around, and the plug socket's been turned off at the wall. And plug sockets don't just turn themselves off. So I'm looking at it. I'm really, really tired. I walk over to it. I turn it on, set the station up again, and I just say, stay on this time. And then I turn around and walk out the room, and it stays on. But that is probably the strangest thing I experienced in that house.
That sounds mega creepy. Maybe the dogs don't like classical FM and they prefer R&B or something.
Most probably. But one thing that was really weird, so living in this house, I don't live there anymore, I moved out last year, but living in this house, there's some really weird similarities, which I can't explain. It's just weird. So the guy who used to live in the house before me, he was an avid gardener. Like, our back garden, I just had so many beautiful flowers in there, and he had a greenhouse, and he had like all sorts of vegetables and all that he used to grow. I developed, after the first lockdown, I developed a passion for gardening. I was going to get rid of this greenhouse. So it's like, it's taking up half the garden. I don't want it. It looks tatty. And I cleared it all out, and then for whatever reason I had a change of mind. I started gardening and started growing things, become really obsessed with gardening. And then I find out that this guy as well was a sort of a form of electrician. And that's what I do as a job. So then I felt like that, like all these similarities that started popping up. And like, this was before I knew about this person who lived there before me. And it wasn't until there was this dog that kept shitting in our front garden. And I was getting so pissed. I was like, who's letting their dog just crap on someone's garden? So one day I go out there to confront this woman. So I go out there and I see this dog. It comes up to me, wants a fuss, and I'm like, "Is this your dog?" And this woman come over and went, "Oh yeah, I'm really sorry. That is my dog." She goes, "That was my ex-husband's house, and he used to look after dogs, so they think it's their house still, so they go over there, to think they're going to go in." I completely forgot about the whole sort of like, pick your dog shit up sort of thing. So this little like sort of old lady, I'm going to be rude to her sort of thing. And yeah, she just started talking to me about, that was her ex-husband's house and all this and all that. And then she just casually told me that he died in the house. I was like, oh.
That's creepy, man.
Yeah.
The kind of, like you're saying, the synchronicities that were happening as well with, you, getting into gardening and stuff. I've known you 10 years and...
I'd never wanted the garden. It was all about music. And all of a sudden, I want to grow potatoes and tomatoes. And the onions.
Possessed by the gardener.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah, he's still inside you,
Well, I would explain the amount of weight I put on, obviously.
But yeah, I think, I hope you've really enjoyed our stories. These are just things that just happened to us. But yeah, thank you again so much for listening to our very first episode. We've had a lot of fun and we can't wait to start hearing your stories in the upcoming episodes. We've got some more guys joining us on the next episode. We haven't heard their stories, but, we've heard a very brief kind of, what they're about, and they sound really exciting. So we're really, really excited to hear them for the first time. If you liked what you heard on this show, please help support us and help us grow by, following us on Spotify. I'm not sure if you can leave us a review until you've listened to maybe 5 episodes, but maybe, once you've done that, if you could leave us a nice review, that'd be amazing. You can also help us out by finding us on Instagram. We're probably going to start a TikTok as well and a YouTube. So you can give us a follow there. And we've got a Facebook as well. Yeah. But yeah, like we say, you can find us everywhere at yourghoststoriespodcast.com. If you want to share your stories, we can either read them out or, like we say, get you on the show. You can email us at yourghoststoriespodcast@gmail.com.
Get involved and be a part of the community.
But yeah, I guess that concludes our first episode, and we'll see you next week for episode 2.
See ya.
Sleep tight.